Okay, so you might remember a couple months back, Josh Hawley introduced an act, the Pelosi Act, to stop insider trading in Congress. Now, so many people in Congress on the Republican side, certainly not on the Democrat side, have called out Nancy Pelosi stock trading. You would think they all would have been for it, but Rick Scott, former governor of Florida, currently senator from Florida, he didn't like the idea. You know how much he didn't like the idea? Cuck turd here pointed out it's not cat turd. It's
No.
not cat turd.
Parody account.
It's a parody account making fun of. Far be it from cat turd to call out Rick Scott,
No.
Donald Trump's BFF over there. So Cuck turd called him out. He's worth 500 million, and he got very, very offended at the idea of stopping Congress people from trading. He claims that's not what bothers him, but it seems that's really what bothers him because what do you have against people making money? Here we
Right.
go.
I own operating businesses, but somehow it's suspect because I made money. I don't know how many people in the audience, how many of you don't want to make money? Anybody want to be poor? I don't.
Who here wants to be poor?
Okay. Now, bookmark that in your brain. He made money in businesses. There's nothing wrong with that. People just go after him unfairly because he made money. Keep in mind that he said that.
Right? So this idea that we're going to attack people because they make money is wrong. Is absolutely wrong. We should cherish all of our different backgrounds. Every one of us has a different background. I've got a business background. But what I was just accused of is making money, and somehow I can't be fair and do things the right way. So I think it's disgusting what is going on here. So, but I agree with I completely agree with you. We've got to stop people from trading stocks. But this is way different. This is an attack against the president, attack against the vice president. That's what this is. So I think it's wrong.
Okay, so as he often does when he's being particularly douchey, he slaps the Velcro on his side. He puts the other part on Trump, and he slaps himself right there next to Trump. Yeah, they actually made a carve out knowing that they're dealing with Il Trumpo, arguably the most corrupt president in the history of the nation, that there's no way he's going to sign legislation that would stop him from trading. So they actually, what he says at the end is not true. They intentionally made a carve out in the hope that Trump would sign it, that, oh, no, you can do your dodgy crypto cell phone business, whatever the fuck you and your half-bright kids are doing to make money off the presidency. You can still do that, but hey, could you sign this, please? So that's not even true, but he claims that's why, in order to get the chuds to not think he's a creepy asshole. So this was just this week he puts this out because this was not a good look for him. He got lambasted a lot for it. So deflecting to Pelosi. This is from his website, August 20th. Senator Rick Scott calls for GAO review of Nancy Pelosi's trading history. Today, Senator Rick Scott sent a letter to the Government Accountability Office requesting a full audit and review of the stock trading history of former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her immediate family throughout her time in Congress. This review is crucial to fully understanding any potential avenues for corrupt members to use insider information for personal gain and ensure the public's trust that members are working in Americans' best interests. Well, that all sounds good. He goes on for what he's requesting them to examine. The few bullet points here. The timing and nature of any stock trades or investments made by Representative Pelosi or her immediate family that may have intersected with pending legislation or congressional activity under her purview. Whether any existing ethics, disclosure, or conflict of interest requirements were violated. recommendations for additional oversight or legislative reforms to prevent potential financial conflicts among members of Congress in the future. And he goes on, while I work on legislation to ban members from trading stocks, I have led several bills to stop members from benefiting off their service in other ways, including the No Corruption Act and a ban on members lobbying after their service. We must continue working to identify and address any wrongdoing by members to ensure public officials are held to the highest ethical standards and that the American people can trust their elected representatives. And he steals this one from the boss. Thank you for your attention to this important matter. Please do not hesitate to reach out to my office for any additional information, and I look forward to your response and bringing transparency to former Speaker Pelosi's trading history to help us identify and root out corruption in our federal government. Okay. All right. So that's really interesting that he dropped that on August 20th, because just a few days later, he very quietly updated his reporting on his own trades from unusual whales. Holy, look at this. Senator Rick Scott just disclosed trades more than a year late. They were worth $26 million. You did not read that wrong. He traded millions on companies he legislated. Unusual. Yeah, you could say that. So I'm sure that was just a coincidence that he made a big show of his anti-corruption efforts and wrote a whole letter trying to focus attention on his opposition to Nancy Pelosi's trades right before he knew he was going to be updating his own filings. This is from Amuse. Rick Scott disclosed roughly $26 million in stock trades more than a year past the legal deadline, with the filings covering 2024 transactions surfacing in mid-August 2025. For violating the Stock Act, he faces a hefty $200 fine.
Wow.
Unless he convinces the Senate to waive it. And he now insists he's learned his lesson. Senator Scott is the richest senator. Wow. I wonder why these guys would just ignore the rules with those hefty fines they have to pay if they get caught. What terrible. It's almost like Congress can't police itself and they shouldn't be writing the laws that govern their own activities. Kind of like the IDF.
Right.
This is vote in or out. Scott and his family invested more than $26 million in firms that had direct business before the Senate committees he served on. That means the same man voting on laws that shaped healthcare, energy, and defense was also personally profiting from those industries. Critics call it a clear conflict of interest, while watchdog groups warn that this is exactly how political power gets twisted into personal wealth. Scott, worth hundreds of millions already, insists the trades were handled through a trust. All right, so people who are native to Florida might be more familiar with Rick Scott's personal history than the rest of us are. But it's worth taking a deep dive into who Rick Scott is. So little detour here. You might remember President Trump being asked what he wanted to cut from Medicare and Medicaid. This is what he said.
The only thing we're cutting is waste, fraud, and abuse. With Medicaid, waste, fraud, and abuse. There's tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. There's incompetent things put in. We have illegal aliens that are multiple killers with multiple murder records getting Medicaid. I don't think anybody minds if we cut that. The Democrats, on the other hand, are going to destroy it because they're going to leave these people on. We're cutting three things: waste, fraud, and abuse. We're not changing Medicaid, and we're not changing Medicare, and we're not changing Social Security. And if I wanted to do those things, I would have done it during my 4 years that we were.
Okay, so you might remember he went on to push his big beautiful bill, which cut 900 billion from those programs through Congress and signed it. But that's not really the main point. He says that he's really concerned about waste, fraud, and abuse, and yet he has endorsed Rick Scott for Senate over and over again. Rick Scott, while DeSantis was still running in the primary, got out early and endorsed Trump. But if he wants to crack down on waste, fraud, and abuse, he might want to look at his buddy Rick Scott. Rick Scott had to resign as executive of a company that committed the largest case of Medicare fraud in U.S. history. The company was fined $1.7 billion for it, but Scott still left with $300 million in stock, $5.1 million severance, and a $950,000 consulting contract for 5 years.
It is one of the biggest criminal investigations of an American corporation ever.
We're executing a search warrant.
In the past few months, hundreds of federal agents have raided at least 70 of Columbia's hospitals and offices in 7 states.
Rick Scott promised explosive growth to shareholders, but to insiders, Rick Scott could be ruthless.
They seem to care more about profits than medicine.
Good old-fashioned fraud, lying for money.
Over the last decade, Columbia has made its stockholders and executives rich.
The company cheated the Medicare program, and they knew what they were doing.
Regularly filing false Medicare reports and overcharging the government.
Charging the government for everything from Kentucky Derby tickets to country club memberships.
False claims submitted to the government year after year over the course of hundreds of hospitals. Their promotions depended on it. Their bonuses depended on it.
For-profit hospital chain HCA, formerly called Columbia HCA, will plead guilty to criminal conduct.
$745 million to settle charges of fraud in Medicare billing.
Rick Scott and 5 other top corporate executives have resigned, and federal investigators told ABC News today that Scott is now considered a prime target of the investigation. Scott could...
Okay, all right, so a little vintage footage from the time before he parlayed his ill-gotten gains into a political career. Now, this is part of what drives me crazy about people like Benny in the Closet and Alex Jones and Nick Sorter. They treat Rick Scott like he's in the club, right? They run cover for Rick Scott. And at the same time, these are the people who will be screaming about all the fraud, waste, and abuse in Medicaid and Medicare, but they'll embrace this reptile. Now, as you will see, the term psychopath is used quite a lot in regards to politicians, usually accurately so, but probably usually as a clinical diagnosis, it's an exaggeration. Not in this case. This guy is a stone cold psychopath. So we're going to take a look a little more deeply at how he made this money and what kinds of practices his hospital chain kind of pioneered in their effort to make profit. So this is George Rockall Schmidt. He did a very good job with this. If you want to watch the whole thing, The Shameful Case of Rick Scott and Healthcare Fraud, excellent video. Give the guy a follow. So let's take a look at just a little bit of this to give you an idea how this guy made his money.
According to staff, Columbia HCA cut costs by deliberately understaffing nursing shifts, replacing registered nurses with staff trained in-house, without the same level of professional qualifications that were generally the standard, and by introducing inferior supplies. Some patients who were unprofitable to treat were sometimes dumped, that is, discharged or moved elsewhere, even if they were not in a stable condition, and even if it was dangerous or medically unethical to do so. As it grew, Columbia HCA especially relied on referrals from local doctors. It tried to secure these with kickbacks, not unlike the way the Sacklers tried to woo doctors in their quest to get America addicted to OxyContin. Expensive dinners, lavish trips or functions, loans with no expectation of repayment, office rents paid for, all created an ecosystem of corruption where many doctors served their patients second and themselves and Columbia first. Analysis by the University of Auburn estimates that Columbia paid just under $7 million in kickbacks just in El Paso, and from that generated more than $100 million in Medicare business. These kickbacks were acts of serious corruption that were ongoing since at least 1994. If you can't trust your doctor to send you to the right hospital or pursue the correct medical treatment because there's no money to be made, who can you trust? But how Columbia HCA billed Medicaid and Medicare, that is, the United States government, was pure fraud. Thanks to more than 30 healthcare professionals with the spine to become whistleblowers, the FBI sank its teeth into Columbia HCA in March of 1997, starting at El Paso and expanding their investigation to the rest of the company in July, the same month that Scott resigned under pressure from the board. Their investigation uncovered fraud on a massive scale. The company had been overcharging Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE patients, that is, military and ex-military patients, almost all the way back to Columbia's inception in 1989. They overbilled government programs for lab tests, conducted lab tests when they weren't needed, they misreported diagnoses to the government to inflate reimbursement costs, they lied about their property taxes and tax liabilities, they charged the government for community education that was just in fact their own marketing. Yes, the taxpayer footed the bill for a chain of private, for-profit hospitals making $19 billion a year at its height for advertisements. And that's not all. When Columbia HCA bought out other hospitals, it fraudulently claimed administration and management fees as medical expenses. They further bumped up profits by providing home visits for patients that did not need them, or sometimes not providing home visits but claiming that they did. The FBI called the fraud systematic and said that it was perpetrated by corporate officers, including CEO Rick Scott, the company's president, and the company's corpo in charge of internal auditing. They even had a secret fund of up to $1 billion to pay back Medicaid, Medicare, or insurance companies that asked questions.
Okay. So I want you to remember this every time you hear somebody like Elon or somebody like Trump or really any of these people talking about federal workers who are ripping off the system, immigrants who are ripping off the system. Remember how they treat Rick Scott. When you watch these hosts like Benny in the Closet, who's had Rick Scott on many times, or when you watch Fox, or when you watch Newsmax, or when you watch any of these networks talking about waste, fraud, and abuse, who will then go and give Rick Scott a foot rub when they have him on, treat him with all respect like he's their buddy, you remember these people hate you and they want you to die. They hate you and they want you to die. They are trying to manipulate you into signing your own death warrant by propping up sick, deranged psychopaths like Rick Scott. We have more, but do you want to add anything, Keaton?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay, so how does Donald Trump, who cares so much about the waste, fraud, and abuse, what does he say? Thank you to Senators Marco Rubio and Rick Scott of Florida for the great endorsements. Nice when both highly respected Republican Florida senators endorse Trump over the missing from Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSanctimonious. They know something that others don't. Wow, man, if he meant any of what he said, he'd say, keep your endorsement, right? Like, this isn't like an obscure thing. This is the biggest case of Medicare fraud in the history of the country. So why would you embrace him? Because he doesn't care about any of that. He just cares about who benefits. Key bono. This is why I say psychopath. It's not just this hospital. That, by the way, Rick Scott was the co-founder of that. His partner had contacts with wealthy blue blood families. That was how he got the financing to build this hospital corporation. He was the founder. He's not like a CEO got hired with this already in progress. He made that company what you just heard. But he wasn't done. Like, he's really made a life out of profiting from people's illness and the denial of health care. He seems to get off on it. Heart doctors outraged. Florida dumps hospital standards after big gifts to GOP. This is 2016 when he's the governor. The state of Florida is putting thousands of children with heart defects at risk. A group of cardiac doctors say because of a change in policy that came after Tenet Healthcare contributed $200,000 to Florida Republicans. In a widely publicized investigation in June, CNN revealed that a program at a Tenet hospital in Florida had failed to live up to state quality standards for children's heart surgery. Less than 2 months later, the state decided to get rid of those standards. The decision came right after the giant for-profit hospital chain made contributions to Republican Governor Rick Scott and its party that dwarfed those the company made to candidates or parties in other states. Now, if you are somebody who's very angry about Andrew Cuomo getting money from the hospital lobby in New York and then shoving grandma into these nursing homes to die, well, you should be angry about this too, right? Like, if you hate that kind of corruption, how much worse does it get than getting rid of standards for kids with heart conditions?
Yeah.
Because they gave you $200,000. How much more of a scumbag can you be? Understand, this is not Democrats. It's not Republicans. They all hate you. If you are the average person, if you're the working person, if you're the middle class person, it's not Republicans. It's not Democrats. It's all of them. They hate you. They hate you and they want you dead. This is Rick Scott being confronted about the fact that he got rid of the Obamacare Medicaid expansion in the state of Florida, so poor people could not afford to get health care. And he went into a Starbucks. One of the workers told him what she thought about that.
It doesn't work. In fact, you cut Medicaid, so I couldn't get Obamacare. You're an asshole. You don't care about working people. I'm not talking to you. You don't care about working people. You should be ashamed to show your face around here.
$1 million jobs.
$1 million jobs? Great. Who here has a great job?
You should.
Or is looking forward to finishing school? You really feel like you have a job coming up? You stripped women of access to public health care. Shame on you, Rick Scott. We depend on those services. Rich people like you don't know what to do. When poor people like us need health services, you cut them. Shame on you, Rick Scott. You're an embarrassment to our state.
Sweet.
That's what you call a Florida woman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Florida woman. Gave it to him. But he wasn't done. He wasn't done. He is on a one-man mission to kill sick people. This has been his life's work. So here he is in the run-up to the big, beautiful bill doing an interview.
What they were doing was...
Whoops. Hang on. Did I not load that
Yeah, I
one
think you
in?
got to load that one in.
Whoops. Okay. Give me a minute. Vamp for a minute.
All right. Here, I'll read a super chat. What do we got here? Tim Canterbury, thanks for the 20 euro. Israeli leadership cite example of Native Americans and Japanese to make the case they can get away with Gaza genocide. Yeah, they say, look, Japan, after getting nuked, is now a vassal state, and the Native Americans joined the army. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've heard them say that.
All right.
Good.
I got it.
Thank you for that.
Sticking point.
Okay, so he was being interviewed about Medicaid and Medicare cuts, which, of course, he's very hot on that idea.
Business about paying able-bodied 30-year-old men without dependents welfare with no work requirement.
The majority of people getting Medicaid are over 50.
Why do some of your colleagues have a problem with that?
It doesn't make sense to me. Number one is if you don't want to work, you're the one that decided you don't want health care.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, Medicaid is supposed to be for children that don't have health care and people with chronic illness. I remember when my brother couldn't get health care, I grew up in public housing. Today, that child might not get it because of what these states are doing. They get more money to take care of able-bodied adults.
So are you...
All right, so pretty much everything he said there is a lie.
Yes.
The idea that Medicaid is only there if you're a child or you have chronic illness, there's absolutely no basis for that in the laws that govern Medicaid. It's for people who can't afford health care based on their income.
Right.
Full stop.
It's for people who don't have enough money. That's what it's for.
For people who don't have enough money. He's presenting it as if you're not in the category of chronic illness and you're not a child, you're defrauding the system by getting Medicaid. Just amazing. And able-bodied 30-year-olds. He didn't say that. The reporter did. That is not the vast majority of people who are on Medicaid. But of course, they have to set up this straw man.
And able-bodied is a red herring too, because it doesn't matter whether you're employed or unemployed. It's about your income. It's about your income. So if you have a shitty job that doesn't give health benefits, you need Medicaid because you don't have enough money to afford health insurance on the private market.
Just the idea that this sick son of a bitch who made his money by understaffing nurses, throwing sick people out on the street in hospital gowns, bribing doctors, and overbilling the Medicaid and Medicare system would go on to make this such a signature issue. You would think you'd want to stay away from those subjects after that. This is what I'm saying. He seems to have a real zest for denying people health care.
Right.
This is his life's work. This is what he got rich on, and he wants to keep doing it in the government. Just make sure if you're sick and you're not rich like me, you should die. Why aren't you dying? Why aren't you getting about the business of dying? So for Rick Scott, the $900 billion of cuts in the big beautiful bill wasn't enough. He introduced his own amendment to cut another $313 billion. The big beautiful bill did not go far enough for Rick Scott. So we actually have a little footage of a psychiatrist commenting on Rick Scott.
Oh, he's a monster. Pure psychopath. So rare to capture one alive.
Yeah, so there you go. There you have it from Dr. Chilton, Maryland Psychiatric Institute there, commenting on Rick Scott. Yeah, Rick Scott belongs in prison. And all of this conversation about lower class, powerless, working class people, immigrants, it is all designed to distract you from that. Even if you feel there are legitimate issues there, you don't think this guy is a bigger issue? Don't talk to me about immigrants until guys like Rick Scott are in prison. Don't talk to me about that while people like this are walking around rich, free, and in the government.
Empowered.
And in power. These people, this is what I've been saying throughout the show. Okay, well, so if you want to do something about illegal immigration, everything goes back to immigrants, this too. Oh, there are millions of immigrants getting illegal Medicaid. Okay, well, institute a federal E-Verify system and start arresting employers who employ illegal immigrants. But they're not going to do that because you know who those people are? Their class. They're donors. People like Rick Scott, people like Donald Trump, literally people like Donald Trump, who was in construction, who used undocumented workers when he had a construction company. They're not going to go after those people. It's all a show. It's all a show. The idea of people like this being treated as if they have any right to be talking about waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. How can you say that you're living in any way in a country that has laws in which you have any kind of a functioning system of justice. If a criminal like Rick Scott can go on to be the governor and then the senator of the state of Florida and get away with what he did, how many people died because of what Rick Scott did? And to continue to be obsessed with taking health care away from people as like a signature issue in your political life, that is a deranged, dangerous psychopath. They're going to keep telling you Abrego Garcia is a danger to the community. This guy is a bigger danger to the community. Even if everything they said about Abrego Garcia was true, you would need 100,000 Abrego Garcias on the street to equal the amount of social damage Rick Scott free is doing.
Yeah, and yet Florida can't stop voting for this guy. They made him governor. They made him senator.
That's amazing.
You can't beat this guy in Florida.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the peasant
Why?
mind. Man, that's what we talk about. I mean, that's what that is. It's very pervasive, unfortunately. But yeah, no, he is just an absolute reptile. There's no doubt. Somebody
He
put
looks
in the
like
chat,
a reptile.
Yeah. Somebody put in the chat, not a super chat, but I caught it as a scroll by. It said Rick Scott smells with his tongue.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it. He's reptilian. Absolutely. Just look at his reaction to that lady in the coffee shop. Oh, you should learn the facts. You should go get a job. I mean, it's just utter contempt. And how little respect do you have for yourself if you vote for a guy like that?
That is just amazing. But that's where, in doing my research, I saw him making appearances on all the griftiverse channels, all the manosphere channels. Nobody asks him about this. They don't ask him about this. Why did you defraud I thought you guys all care about waste, fraud, and abuse. Wow. So why you got Rick Scott on your show? That's the first thing you should bring up to him, but they never will.
No, never will. That is true.
Please clap.